All right, everyone. So I think now's a great time to get started. Just a couple of very quick housekeeping items before we kick things off. If you haven't already entered your audio pin on your GoToMeeting control panel, you should see a 4-digit code. If you'd be so kind, just type it in on your phone, just so that we can see you having logged in into the GoToMeeting. Very quickly as well, if you have any questions for us over the course of the hour, feel free to address those questions using the questions box that you see in the GoToMeeting control panel, and we'll do our best to answer your questions today. Also, we will be offering some PDU credits, and we will display the PDU information towards the end of today's session. So, just stay with us until we go ahead and display that for you. On that note, I'm very excited today. We have two very special guests with us. Ladies first, let me just introduce Elizabeth R. To you. She's a partner with Hinge Marketing's high-tech practice. And we also have with us Joe Longo. He's president at PSVillage. So let me just go ahead and turn it over to you, Joe.
Well, thanks, Marlon. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining. Like Marlon says, we have a very good turnout today, huge registration list, so there's a lot of interest in this topic of metrics and SaaS. Before I get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I live here in the Bay Area. Prior to my work at PSVillage, I was a VP of Professional Services for well over 15 years, so I have quite a bit of experience running professional services within high-tech companies, primarily in the Bay Area. And with me is Liz. Liz Haar is the partner for the high-tech practice at Hinge Marketing. Hinge Marketing is a consulting firm that specializes in providing services marketing to services organizations. Liz and I have collaborated in the past on quite a few projects. Liz's background before Hinge is she was a CEO of a former software company, and she's located in the Washington, D.C. area. Liz, are you there?
I am, and hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Joe. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, so today's agenda, we'd like to go over a number of topics leading into the specifics on SaaS and on-premise KPIs and metrics. But first, I want to get some level setting. I'd like to discuss why there's a need for KPIs and metrics in general. Then I'd like to define what SaaS is and how there's been a paradigm shift for SaaS organizations. We'll talk about some of the challenges in adapting to SaaS and why the metrics are key as you adapt to those challenges. Then I hand over to Liz. She'll present some of the results of their research in the marketing area, which I think you'll find pleasantly surprising. And we'll wrap up with some actual benchmark results and talk about future directions in this area.
Shown after joining the webinar.
Okay, and here's some background noise if you folks could mute if you could. So Marlon, can we run the very first poll, please?
Absolutely. Let me just go ahead and launch that for the audience, and let me just go ahead and read it out. So today's quick poll is: are you using a PSA solution to track your key metrics? So please select one. Yes. No, and no might mean that you don't have a PSA solution in place at all, or you're not leveraging your PSA solution to track your key metrics. And the third answer is that you do not know. So we'll give the audience maybe another 5 or 10 seconds to go ahead and answer before we go ahead and close things off.
Thanks, Marlon.
Right.
Marlon, while they're doing that, I just got a note from one of the attendees saying that the audio is a little bit low. Just doing an audio check with you. Does it sound okay now?
I think I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good.
So let's go ahead and close the polls. And we'll share that with the audience, and we'll see how we did. So let me just go ahead and read the results. So 35% of the audience said yes, they were using the PSA solution to track their key metrics, and another 49% said no.
Well, that's really interesting, Marlon, because many of the surveys we've run indicate that somewhere between 50 and 60% of PSOs are running a PSA. And yet, from the audience that we have here, only a third of them are using the PSA to track the metrics. And as you see, as we get into the topic, metrics are key to running a PS business. And certainly in my belief, the PSA is key to success of any PSO. So this is interesting data.
Right on.
Okay. So let's talk about the need for KPIs. Well, you may remember from your high school days that anytime you can measure a particular topic or an area of study, you're turning that topic from an art into a science. And that's certainly true with professional services. Without the KPIs, without the metrics, PSO is very subjected to external measures for success. So what you'll find is people are coming in and telling you how successful you are in professional services through very subjective terms such as customer satisfaction and just hallway conversations. KPIs are a way of turning that subjective analysis into a very objective scientific approach, which allows you to take some kind of action if needed. Now, what I've always found is all PSO groups will measure the basics. They tend to measure revenue, profitability, revenue per head, utilization, just some of the basics that you need just to run an organization. But the more mature a PS organization gets, the more refined are their metrics and KPIs. So you start to see things like blended targeted utilization as one of the metrics, cost of services sold, additional information financial on gross margins and cost of sales and so forth. So with that, let's also talk about, let's also define SaaS versus on-premise. SaaS tends to be an overloaded term, and going back to the late 90s, when Salesforce really introduced this and launched it, they may not have been the first SaaS company, but they certainly made it very popular. People have been adopting SaaS because it's kind of a pretty good marketing term, even though they're not really SaaS-oriented. For my purposes, SaaS is synonymous with offering software in the cloud, being an ASP provider, or simply providing on-demand software. SaaS is typically independent of license models. So whether you're SaaS or not, really is independent of whether you offer a perpetual license or a subscription. SaaS usually talks about a per seat perpetual or annual revenue models, and SaaS implementation characteristics, we talk about multi-tenant, user configurable, and scalable as distinct to on-premise models, which are the more traditional models of installed software. So in the on-premise model, it's typically installed at the customer site using the customer IT assets, and by that I mean the network, the hardware, software stack, and the resources. And then there's this third category, hosted, which has some of the service characteristics of on-premise, but with the additional IT services bundled in. So a lot of folks on this call will relate to this. The company offers software in a hosted model, and they call it SaaS, but really in my mind, all you're doing is taking those IT assets and bringing them in-house. Yeah, so it's not quite SaaS. So with that, let's get to polling question number 2, Marlon. I'd like to see how many people are actually, based on my definition, pure SaaS, pure on-premise, or have a blended model, or they're not sure.
All right, so let me go ahead and just kind of narrate that poll. So what is your preferred delivery model? So as Joe mentioned, SaaS or what others call cloud-based, on-premise, a blend of both, or you don't know. So once again, we'll give the audience just a few moments to go ahead and answer today's poll.
Interesting, I see the numbers coming in. Okay.
And let's go ahead and close the poll and share it with the audience and see how we did. So 45% certainly preferred going with more of a cloud-based solution or a SaaS-based delivery model. Only 11% sort of preferred on-premise only, and another fairly large bulk of today's audience preferred a blended, sort of a blended delivery model with both SaaS and on-premise.
Yeah, thanks, Marlon. This is actually very interesting because we have several hundred people dialed in at the moment, so these numbers are statistically significant. So as Marlon said, we have well over 40% of the people consider them SaaS-based, and then you have another 35% that are blended, not to leave the on-premise people behind. But I take that as meaning that there's a lot of interest in the challenges with running a SaaS model and certainly the metrics related to SaaS. So that's great feedback. So let's get on then with talking about some of the challenges. what I refer to as the paradigm shift, the impact of SaaS on PS organizations. Well, again, thanks to some of the large industry leaders that have really set the tone for SaaS, customers have a perception of the SaaS model. And one of the perceptions is you don't need any professional services. It's out there in the cloud, just turn it on. Or if you do need professional services, it's already included in the cost, or it's just free. And any new functionality you get, everybody gets, so I never have to pay for it. So if I ask for a new feature, it's going to be beneficial to everybody else. And you're not going to come back and charge me for the professional services associated with this. Contrast that to the traditional on-premise model where typically you charge for professional services separately. If there's anything out of scope, you charge for that. If you have to build any custom software, you charge for that as well. So the impact of SaaS on a PS organization is quite fundamental, in the sense that a lot of us have been working in the on-premise model. Now we have to adjust it to the customer perception of what professional services means in the SaaS model. And the associated business impacts, it's not just professional services that gets impacted, it's also the companies associated with SaaS. So the pricing models have to be adjusted. So if you are going to embed your services fee into the license cost, then you have to adjust your pricing model. Organizations have to adapt, operations have to absorb these changes, and these changes are then reflected in the business model. Nothing speaks to that more loudly than the impact on a company's valuation. It turns out, and a lot of people on the call will probably be familiar with this, if you're working for a startup or a medium-sized software company, your valuation as a SaaS company can enjoy a much greater multiple than your valuation as an on-premise company. So typically a software company may get valuations of 4 times revenue. SaaS companies can see 10 times revenue or more, simply because they're SaaS, which is fascinating, and that doesn't reflect at all on the work that we in professional services have to go through for those SaaS customers. So the impacts are quite significant dealing with this whole paradigm shift. And therefore, the KPIs, the metrics that we in professional services need to measure, need to change. SaaS permeates the business in other ways. How do you fund services which are perceived to be low cost or at no cost to customers? Again, that gets back to your pricing models. What are the roles of the project manager, the solution manager, the business analyst? Well, these days, typically in SaaS, they're all blended into one role, an account manager. And the PS software innovation is being de-emphasized. You know, in my early days in professional services, a lot of the innovation and products came from the customer requirements. So we would have several strategic customers, and they would define our roadmap based on their business needs. Well, professional services would lead the way. Typically, we would do some custom development, deploy for the customer, and that would be folded into the next release. In the SaaS environment, you have a lot less flexibility for that. In fact, typically, professional services doesn't have that ability. In my mind, that adds to the challenges of providing SaaS or providing professional services in that SaaS environment. So the business impacts, it felt all the way through the business, not just in professional services. Then there's personnel impacts, specifically for the people in professional services. So what used to be a VP of professional services has now morphed into VP of customer success, or the chief services officer, or some other kind of euphemism to get away from the phrase professional services. But he or she still performs essentially the same tasks. You have to get the customer requirements, you have to configure the system, you have to deploy it, make sure there's training, go live support, and so forth. And the next point, the PS consulting skills, is very dear to my heart. I've always felt that professional services can really differentiate itself from other groups. A professional services organization can differentiate itself by providing consultative skills, not just technical skills. Well, in a SaaS environment, there's a lot less scope for that. Because in SaaS you typically are not seeing the customer, you're not face-to-face, you're not doing as much of that consultative work as possible. So therefore, the career paths in professional services start to get a little bit more narrow. Now, let's talk about the challenges relating to adapting to a SaaS model. Now, for a new company, it's simply evolution. You're building your company up from the ground up. You're developing the appropriate methodology. You're aligning roles. You hire appropriately. You determine the KPIs as you grow. So a lot of the folks on the call, the 45% that said that they are already SaaS, a lot of those probably have started from the ground up. And they're evolving, and the whole SaaS environment is certainly evolving in the market as well, and they're adapting to that evolution. But for a traditional PS in a company that is going from on-premise to SaaS, the adaptation to the new model is very painful. For example, if you're going from an on-premise model to SaaS, who in your organization will move to the new role? Who stays behind in the on-premise model? A lot of the folks working in professional services will see the new model being the career path opportunity. They see the old model. If you're in that, you'll be left behind. So you start to have career challenges there. Is a SaaS team of equal importance? Do they get to play with all the new toys? Do people even care about the folks that are on the old system? Do you share resources across SaaS and traditional teams? And how do you share them? How do the methodologies adapt? Remember, you've got the same solution effectively. You've got a certain methodology in the on-premise model. You're going to adapt it. How are you going to change it? Do you still fly to the customer? Do you do it remotely and so forth? Do you maintain two sets of KPIs? And how do you deal with the precipitous revenue drop? For my career, headcount was pretty much based on PS revenue. It was very easily measurable. If we got the revenue, we got the margins, we could hire more people. Suddenly in SaaS, maybe there's no revenue for PS. So how do you deal with that? How do you measure the headcount? So these are the challenges that you face once you get into that environment. And then I asked a rhetorical question: why aren't we presenting answers to these questions? Well, best practices in these areas are still evolving, and the answers are very sensitive to your company and business model. So I can sit here and say this is what you should be doing with respect to, say, revenue. But actually that wouldn't be fair, because different companies have different business models, different ways of rolling out their software and adapting to customer needs. So there aren't any generic answers to these questions. It would be a great topic for a future webinar. Okay, so let's talk about the specific KPIs that we see measured out there. And I've got this table here with quite a bit of data, so I'll walk you through it from top to bottom. And for those of you that are dialed in, you'll get a copy of the slides. You'll be able to read my definitions on the side here. So in a traditional environment, you'll be looking at things like utilization, cost per head, and revenue per head. In a SaaS environment, you're still looking at utilization. You may still be looking at cost per head, but if you're not measuring revenue, you probably won't be measuring revenue per head. And that's pretty obvious. But take a look at this next one: speed of adoption. In the traditional on-premise model, the idea is to go in, install, set up, configure, go live, and get out of there as quick as you can, because you have to get the next environment. Success of a product is that the SaaS environment has to be adopted by the end users. And it's really the professional services, it's the role of professional services to adapt to that, to get the users to adopt to that environment. So the number of users using the system once you've deployed it is a key KPI. Gross margin, we're still typically measuring that, but it's still being de-emphasized for SaaS. Cost of sales, we'll look at that in a traditional model, but again, because the professional services is better for SaaS, we may not be measuring it there. Solution footprint is another one. This requires definition. In an on-premise model, typically the customer has licensed one particular solution or one particular module from you. You're not really concerned about them expanding their footprint or doing an upsell. In the SaaS model, because your revenue is very dependent on how many modules they've deployed, professional services is often tasked with encouraging the customer to expand their footprint. Solution utilization, same sort of thing. Okay, so you have users on the system, but are they utilizing it? Are they using your software as a key business process. If they're not, they could easily turn it off. Not so easy in the on-premise model. And then customer stickiness. This is key. I think people understand this. Because in a SaaS model, the profitability comes in towards the second and third year of the license. Stickiness is key, meaning customer satisfaction is always a PSO prerogative. Whereas in the traditional model, well, you know, it can be shelfware. We still made our money and our revenue. We can move on. Marlon, just want to do another sound check with you. I just got an alert from one of the users or one of the attendees saying that there are some sound issues. How's it sound to you?
So far, so good. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Okay, so if not with my piece, before I go on, I'd like to hand over to Liz. And as I said, Liz is the partner for the high-tech practice. Let me describe a little bit about what you're about to see. Hinge Marketing does quite a bit of research, primarily for services-only companies. And Liz and I have been collaborating for the past couple of years on various projects, such as the surveys that were published. And what she's really improved my awareness of is the need for services organizations, captive organizations, the need for them to invest in marketing for differentiation. So she's going to present results of the research, and then once we're done with that, we'll tie it back into the relevance of metrics with respect to PSOs. So Liz, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Joe. You know, it's been interesting listening to you talk about the results of your research and the types of metrics that firms ought to be tracking. And at Hinge, as you mentioned, we too focus on metrics. And what we strive to understand through our own research is how tracking and measuring contributes to growth and profitability specifically. And you know, the metrics we think about exist in a slightly different dimension from the types of metrics you've been talking about, but we've been able to identify two buckets of metrics that, when tracked by service firms, can dramatically impact both growth and profitability. So let's just take a look at the first metric here, and that is doing research on your clients. And I'm not talking about customer satisfaction, by the way. I'm talking about research that measures the quantifiable aspects of doing business with your clients. And we found, again, through our own research we've conducted over the years, that services firms who know more about their clients and then use that data to drive internal decisions on bringing products and services to market grow faster and are more profitable. And I don't think that's an earth-shaking surprise, but what I do think is interesting is the ability to quantify the impact of doing regular research, because this is often something that gets pushed out of budget because so many firms make the mistaken assumption that, given the close nature of the relationships they have with their clients, they don't need to do research and that they already have a pulse on their market. And we find that that is just not the case. Now, if I could just talk about one more metric here, going to the next slide. What we're looking at here is the difference in how high growth firms rate the efficacy of certain online marketing tools versus how average growth firms rate those same tools. And I know that many of today's participants probably don't have some of these tools on their radar. They may not be something they think about on a daily basis. So bear with me for just a moment, if you would, because there are certain more granular metrics, like you know, KPIs, if you will, that exist outside the things such as usability and revenue per head that we were talking about earlier, that actually can have a significant impact on what we're all looking to achieve, which is growth and profitability. So the yellow bar here on this chart represents the efficacy rating high growth firms gave to certain marketing tools, as I said, and the purple represents the rating that average growth firms gave those tools. And then on the left, you'll see each of those tools they were asked to rate. So interestingly, we found that high growth firms rated two types of metrics, and those are highlighted in that peach kind of color that you see: web analytics and usability, or A/B testing, as being highly effective when it comes to helping them understand their bottom line. And we found that average growth firms are just not using these particular tools as much as high growth firms are, and therefore aren't seeing them as effective. Now, with web analytics, for example, what I'm referring to here is tracking how your online initiatives are paying off. Is traffic being driven to your website? Are your products or services videos being watched? Are website visitors taking the action you want them to take, whether it's requesting a proposal or giving you a call or downloading a white paper? So web analytics are critical to helping a firm understand how well their overall initiatives are stacking up against their bottom line goals. So Joe, thank you for letting me talk about these quickly. Hopefully it's helpful and quantifies how tracking and measuring these pieces impacts growth and profitability, and shows that there are, KPIs, if you will, are kind of multidimensional here.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Liz. And let me just drill down a little bit here. As Liz says, and for clarity, a lot of this research is based on services-only firms, and a lot of the folks on this call, especially when we talk about SaaS and on-premise, services organizations, captive organizations within a product company. But what I found stunning some time ago was that we needed to do our own, we in my organization need to do our own marketing, have our own marketing initiatives. And so what Liz is talking about is the impact of growth on your services. And I'll give you a very good case study. In a prior life, I had to run professional services and a consulting business. Well, when we started the consulting business, we actually bootstrapped a whole separate web page that drove people to the services we were offering, just the services without the software. And it turns out 2 of the biggest deals we got in that company came from visitors to that page, not to the products page. And what Liz is talking about here, Liz, when you have here web analytics and usability testing, if you're going to go so far as I did back then you have to get into this whole space of analytics, such as Google Analytics and other tools out there, and usability testing to determine what sort of stickiness you get. So putting it in the context of metrics, Liz, could you share with us 1 or 2 metrics that you would recommend that you would check on, say, with your web analytics tools if you did have your own web presence?
Sure. A couple key things that you want to make sure you're tracking. And by the way, when you're talking about web analytics, we find that monthly tracking is sufficient. It's kind of like the stock market. It's not something you want to do every day unless that's your job. So if you're looking at monthly analytics, such as not just website traffic, but website traffic and conversions, which pages are yielding the most conversions? When you talk about website traffic, what is the source? Those sorts of things are very key as you lay out your online initiatives. Does that help, Joe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'll talk about Google Analytics. I'm not promoting it, but it happens to be free. If you pull that up, there's just a multitude of analytics you can track. So simply number of visitors per month and return visitors, those sort of things tell you a lot about how effective you are. Again, putting it in the context, Liz, of a professional services organization or a product company, it's a way to differentiate yourself. And a lot of us in services tend to overlook the need to promote ourselves and the need to market ourselves. And as you and I were discussing on this topic. So it turns out once you get into the space, then you really have to embrace all of it. And that doesn't mean that you need the services organization, as you said, Liz, needs to be checking the web analytics daily, although they could. But what they should do is plug into the corporate marketing. If there's a marketing group in the firm. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what you said a moment ago rings true. You do need to make the effort to make sure that you're communicating about yourself in a way that's resonant with your audience, and then use metrics such as A/B testing, usability testing, to make sure that messages you're taking to market actually are working for you. Otherwise, that's sort of budget down the drain.
Terrific. Okay. Hey, thanks, Liz. That's really valuable. So for the next couple of minutes, let me just share with you some real-world metrics. What you're seeing here is the result of a survey that Liz and I conducted just earlier this year. Because there's a lot of talk about metrics and KPIs, and we asked ourselves, well, what are people really measuring? And in the survey, we asked them that question, what are the top metrics you're measuring? And what we found is over 50% of our respondents were measuring these 4 metrics: utilization, gross margin, customer satisfaction, and we call that an index, and gross sales bookings. So I want to share that with you here. It's actually all written up in a report that has been published by PSVillage. If you're a member of PSVillage, you can go to the PSVillage site, go to the library, and you can pull down the report. So what I think is really interesting is that these are pretty much your garden variety metrics that, as I said early in the presentation, pretty much all PSOs are measuring. And it turns out, in spite of what a lot of consultants will tell you with respect to the esoteric metrics, these are the ones most of us are measuring, and it kind of makes sense. Now, with respect to the difference between an on-premise organization versus a SaaS organization, these are the results we got. The top 5 metrics are on the left for an on-premise organization, and the top 5 on the right for a SaaS organization. And the biggest difference is that you'll find that speed of adoption actually gets into the top 5 for SaaS organizations, and it doesn't really even rate for the on-premise guys, which is quite interesting. And customer satisfaction goes up a little bit, a couple of notches. So, and also you see the customer stickiness, which is what I was talking about earlier. So I think this is pretty much a proof point that when you adopt the SaaS model, you have to think very clearly about the metrics that you want to track to determine the effectiveness of your PSO, and those metrics are going to be different to the on-premise metrics. Going on then, in that report, we present a lot of data. I'm just showing you 3 slides from that report. We also asked them, well, tell us what are the actual metrics we'd like to know. So, and I haven't broken this down between on-premise and SaaS. We have done it in the report. But you can see here the numbers are quite interesting. Utilization targets are 74%. Gross margin targets are 31%. Gross margin, project gross margin, 47%. And revenue per head, $205 revenue per head. They're the targets. And then, of course, the actuals will vary. And like I said earlier on, we're talking today and we're harping on the need to measure and make your services organization a well-run, objective group. The only way to measure these sorts of things is through your PSA. And what I've got here is a sample dashboard that just happens coincidentally to come from the Tenrocks PSA that shows how a dashboard, something you log in on a daily basis, would actually track these numbers, your actual versus targets. Very, very key to the success of any PS group, no question about it. There was another survey done by PSVillage called the Industry Benchmark, which is a much broader benchmark. I just want to share these results with you just very quickly. So again, the distinction between SaaS and on-premise. How many of you are running a project management office? Well, only about 1 in 4. No real distinction between the 2 types of groups. But how many of you are running a knowledge base, which I think is fascinating? I don't think you can live without one. Well, SaaS organizations have adopted a knowledge base in much larger numbers, almost 4/5 of them versus 2/3. And how many of you have adopted a PSA? Again, SaaS groups seem to take the lead here in adopting a PSA. My takeaway from this, and this is my analysis of it, I guess you could say I'm speculating, is that SaaS organizations are traditionally more, are still maturing and are more innovative because of the fact that they're SaaS. And that's why we see some of these things really leading the way in SaaS versus on-premise. Again, this data is coming from the PSVillage industry report, which you can get on the PSVillage website, and Tenrocks is one of our sponsors for that. So finally, conclusions and future directions. PS groups will definitely continue to evolve. We are going to see more customer success groups, advocacy groups, customer evangelists, and less of the consulting, the product consultants, and solution architects. This is stuff that customers are kind of getting away from because of the fact that they want to see it. They want to see it all being turnkey in a SaaS environment. And employers, and this is key to your careers, employers are looking for SaaS-savvy staff. If you don't have SaaS experience, I recommend you get familiar with what's going on in the SaaS world, because that's where the future direction is for PS organizations, no doubt about it. Other considerations, and just quickly, if you are thinking of converting your applications from an on-premise app to a SaaS app, it could quite possibly put you out of business. The software architecture is entirely different, so be very careful in doing that. Don't just go there because marketing says you should do that. And the PS organizational structure should change in some very basic ways, in the way you share resources, the way you have a single account manager versus a team. You're less consultative. You're no longer a necessary evil. You're really essential. And the career growth into R&D versus sales is into R&D versus sales and marketing. So I'm going to wrap up there because I've actually run over my time, and I'm going to give this back to Marlon, who's going to talk a little bit about Tenrocks and how it can help us with measuring the metrics. Marlon, are you there?
I sure am. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm hoping that you and Liz can hang out with us for another 25 minutes or so to potentially answer some questions that might come in from the audience.
Will do.
All right. So let me just do a quick visual check with Joe. Are you able to see my screen?
No, I can't, unfortunately.
Let's see.
Yes, I can.
All right, perfect. Okay. So, obviously I want to spend the majority of my time looking at the live product, but there might be some of our audience that isn't really familiar with Tenrocks from an organizational standpoint. So I thought it might be of benefit just to go through a couple of quick slides to talk about who we are and what type of products and services we provide. So in terms of my agenda, I'll go through a corporate overview, a very quick solution overview. We'll dive into the product, take your questions, and then we'll show you your PDU claim information for those of you that are seeking to keep up your PMP certification. So let's start off with Tenrocks from an organizational standpoint. Tenrocks is a leader in the PSA market. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with that acronym, it stands for Professional Services Automation. From a corporate perspective, we have over 17 years of market leadership experience. We are the largest pure-play cloud-based PSA provider. We're profitable and in good standing, and we're backed by people with a lot of money. So that's Austin Ventures, who have $4 billion as a fund. That's essentially who we are, who's behind us from a financial perspective. We basically have a cloud-based delivery model with 2 different certifications. And the gist of this is that we want to show our customers that we invest in the cloud environment to safeguard your data. Our partnerships include household names like Microsoft and Salesforce.com. We're also on the App Exchange with the Salesforce integration. We have mobile device or a mobile device platform that's available on Apple mobile devices or on the iPhone, on BlackBerry, on Android, as well as Windows Phone. Very quickly, our customers that you see on the upper right-hand corner, so these make up some of the more recognizable names that are leveraging the Tenrocks solution, but in reality, any project-based organization would certainly leverage from our solution. So let's move on to the next slide. So the circle that you see in the middle basically describes the modules and capabilities of the overall solution. So let's kind of start with the inner ring, if you will, and move outwards. Obviously one of the goals is to provide our customers with real-time visibility from a project management, time and expense, project financials, and resource management perspective. So those 4 components make up the Tenrocks solution. So there are 4 modules that make up the solution, and you can pick and choose which ones are relevant for your business. So ultimately, we have some organizations that just come to Tenrocks to automate time and expense reporting. And to add to that, you can add functions related to the delivery of your project from a financial perspective. You can add some of the Gantt charting capabilities as well as the resource management capabilities. All of these I will show you over the course of today. We also have out-of-box integrations to CRM systems, financial and ERP systems, as well as a quick connect platform that allows us to exchange data with virtually any third-party system. So on that note, what I'm going to do, so just a very quick introduction, I'm going to go ahead and get out of PowerPoint, and we'll go ahead and show you the product. The first thing that you should see come up should be a dashboard. So the system is very dashboard centric. Dashboards are kind of like your homepage to your most important reports, and they can also be used as a launching point to other areas of the tool. Now, let me just actually get a couple things out of the way. We're talking about a web-based or a browser-based system, and I just have my browser full screen. You can see the address bar up on top that I'm hiding. So maybe let me just get that out of the way before we go on any further. Now, as soon as you log into the tool, the first thing that you would see would be a dashboard, and the dashboards are all role-based. So the dashboard that you see as a CFO would be different from the dashboard that a project manager would see, or the director of the PMO. The dashboard that you're seeing in front of you does a pretty good job of representing all of the different data formats from a reporting standpoint. So we have some pie charts and bar charts and line graphs. We also have funnel charts, pivot tables, so on and so forth. So virtually anything that you can imagine to represent your data, well, we have it. All right. So let's talk about some of the key performance indicators that you can extract from the tool. I always find it a benefit to show dashboards first, because if you can get a sense of what you can get out of the tool, hopefully it'll give you a better idea of what can go in. So let's concentrate on this project view that I'm mousing over. What's great about the project view is that it shows you all of your active projects. So here are all the different projects that my sample company is engaging in, and I can see the cost, billing, profit, profitability, and margin of each one of these projects. And these are all real-time metrics that I have available at my fingertips. The columns that you see here aren't set in stone. You'll notice that there's a big gap here, and I left that on purpose, just to kind of highlight the ability to add new columns or maybe remove some of the columns that you're not really interested in reporting on. So what you see on the right are the selected columns, which we already have, and on the left are a wide variety of additional key performance indicators or metrics that some of the metrics that we've been talking about today are readily available from a selection standpoint. So if I'm interested in reporting on profitability, the average billing rate by resource, the percentage of completion, maybe I'm also interested in reporting on budgeted cost or budgeted effort in comparison to actual effort. Again, these are metrics that I can simply pick out of thin air almost and add to my report really quite easily. So let me add these three metrics. Let me get rid of this one over here just to show you that I did. We'll click on Save, and we have a brand new report with these brand new key performance indicators, essentially telling me how my projects are progressing. As a general rule of thumb, whatever information you see being displayed in front of you can be drilled into. So if I'm wondering, why I am not profitable on a particular project, I can just click on the name of the project, and it'll generate a project status report for me, where we can see some of the general details, the financial details, the forecasts, who's working on it, forecast versus actual hours, and their utilization. Again, another very important KPI from a general reporting perspective on our projects. What's nice about this is that we can also jump to other areas of the project. So if you have attached documents and you want to visit that this project's a document repository, you can leap right over to there from that hyperlink that you see up on top. We can also visit the project's work plan to schedule additional resources on the project. We can also export this information to Excel. So this is a project status report. So if you want to share this with a customer, you can readily do so just by clicking on Export to Excel, removing some of the data that you don't want them to see, kind of massaging it out, and firing it over to them. Also worth mentioning is some of the capabilities from a forecasting perspective. So forecasted revenue is a big one. You want to basically have a handle in terms of what type of revenue you should be looking forward to in the months to come. So I'll show you a little bit later how we can schedule resources on projects and tie a billing rate to them. And that is those two sort of functions of resource management in combination with billing can provide us with forecasting revenue metrics such as the one that you're seeing on the upper right-hand corner. Also worth mentioning is the ability to report on profit and loss by project. So these are projects that essentially we're working on. And the green ones obviously denote the fact that the project is profitable, so it is over the zero line. And the ones obviously that are dipping just below zero or a lot below zero are the ones that are not profitable or are at a loss. So these are, again, key performance indicators that you have immediate access to as the first thing that you would see when you initially log into the tool. Let's skip over and talk a little bit about some of the resource management and utilization metrics that you can get as well. So this is a resource management dashboard, and it allows me to look into the future. So each one of these lines or bars that you see over here is a future period of time that denotes the utilization of resources. And so picture each one of these as a glass that you kind of fill with liquid, and that liquid can be your allocation of resources. So you can tentatively allocate a resource to a project within our tool, or you can hard book them. And the system will kind of delineate or decipher each one of those utilization or allocation types. So we can see that 38% of our allocation is coming from hard booking, and the remainder of that is coming from soft booking. And of course, you can overfill the glass from an allocation standpoint. So you can over allocate your resources, and if you've done that, the kind of the glass will spill over, so to speak. So hopefully that gives you sort of a nice overview of what some of the dashboarding capabilities are. I certainly don't want to stay here for all that much longer, just bearing in mind that we only have about 5 or 10 minutes left from a presentation perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and change gears, and we'll show you the mechanics as it relates to scheduling resources on our projects and actually just creating projects in a general sense. So here we can see that we're in an area called Project Central. And Project Central is where it all goes down to create new projects. We can import projects from a wide variety of third-party tools. And we can also copy projects more from a templating perspective. So what we can do is we can kind of freeze a project in time and create it as a template if this is a best practice from a project delivery or engagement perspective. And we can use that project for replication and creation purposes. So I can copy this particular project, and I can choose which elements of the project I want to copy. So I can copy, for example, the tasks or the milestones, which would be the work breakdown structure elements, the people who worked on it, so that would be the project team and the work plan, as well as the budgetary information and billing rules. So the idea behind this is that it forms a repeatable process from a project delivery perspective. Once our project is created, let me just kind of hop over, and we'll pop open this project called WPA Upgrade. We'll take a look at what some of the more important factors are from a project definition standpoint. I would say that one of the more important points as it relates to creating projects is figuring out who can work on it, and that happens through the project work plan. The project work plan allows me to staff the project with generic resources or living, breathing human beings, which is probably where you eventually want to go. So if the project is in its infancy, you might not know who by name to allocate to it. All you know is that it needs a developer. And you can use our very cool find option to tap into the resource pool to actually find the resource that matches the skill set and availability of what you're looking for. Okay, so here are all the developers, and here's how well they match up in descending order to my request. Now, also as part of the delivery of our projects, we can go ahead and define a more detailed project schedule. So just bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to bring up the Tenorx project planning tool. This looks and feels a lot like Microsoft Project in the sense that you have the work breakdown structure on the left, you have the Gantt chart on the right. We have this neat little split pane where whatever I select up on top is made available for quick editing at the bottom. So again, the idea behind this is that you don't necessarily need to use Microsoft Project for your more detailed scheduling requirements. You can do it all in Tenorx, whether you're looking to schedule resources just at a high level, or if you want to drill in, create a project plan or a project schedule, and perform your task level resource allocation and task level budgeting. Also, certainly worth mentioning within the context of a PSA tool is the ability to track revenue. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to take a step back. We're going to go head over to the billing tab, and here you can see the different milestones that have been stated or slated for from a billing perspective. So each one of these milestones will happen sequentially, and each one is worth a certain amount. So when you complete work on the project, which should trigger a bill, you would literally complete the invoice, or pardon me, the milestone, and this would include that milestone on the next client invoice right out of the 10 Rocks tool. We also provide the ability to define your time and materials rates. So in this example, we have different people working on the same project, charging out at different billing rates based on their role. So Donna is our PM at $225 an hour. We have John, who's our senior consultant, at $250 an hour. And then we have Peter at $225 an hour. So these are different resources working on the same project, and the rates are varying based on the function that they're performing on this particular project. 10 Rocks is also very strong as it relates to actuals entry. So by actuals, I mean timesheet information. So let me just go ahead and share another view with you. Here's an end user by the name of Jay Adams. So Jay Adams, once he's assigned to that project from that work plan, will come in over here and specify how many hours he worked on that particular day. So I'm being very brief in terms of the time entry capabilities, but this is the sort of the web portal version. Unfortunately, the mechanics of me showing you how the mobile capabilities only work if I were literally right next to you. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. 10 Rocks is very strong and has a greater mobile initiative to include many of the functions that you see on the 10 Rocks web portal on the mobile device. So right now what we are able to do is have our users track time and their expenses, as well as managers approve time and expenses on the mobile device. Eventually, we're going to be rolling out some more or some additional capabilities as it relates to mobile entry and reporting, so you'd have all the same dashboards that I showed you a little bit earlier available on Android, iPhone that you're seeing over here, as well as BlackBerry and Windows Phone. So those are the 4 platforms that we support as of right now. So we're coming full circle. We've shown you quite a bit of the capabilities as it relates to resource management, project planning, financials, and tracking actuals. What I also want to do is show you the reporting capabilities that we have, and then we'll go ahead and take your questions. So I am just going to flip right over to an area within the system that allows us to put together a report. Now, in terms of ad hoc reporting capabilities, we allow you to create your own two-dimensional reports. So that's more of a traditional reporting model, and that's done through a reporting tool that Microsoft provides called Microsoft Reporting Services. We also allow you to create your own reports using a wide variety of different charting tools. So if you want to create a pie chart or a bar chart or a funnel chart, those are all capabilities that you can also leverage. In this particular example, I'm going to go ahead and put together a pivot table for you. So if you've ever worked with pivot tables in Excel, this is the exact same deal. You have a field list that includes essentially every field that we're tracking within the solution. So if I open up measures, I can see everything that we're tracking. So we're tracking things like the total amount of time that's been spent. So I'll just for kicks, I'm going to go ahead and include that within my report. And I'll also include our revenue. So that's what we refer to as the total billable amount. So once we include these two metrics, what I'll go ahead and do is I'll add when this occurred. So by adding a date calendar field, it's going to show me when the time and the revenue was incurred. And then what I'll do is I'll break this down and show it by customer. So if I open up the little clients option over here and add the client list, I'll see who we spent the time for and how much. So for Acme, we're talking about a little bit short of 20,000 hours worth of time spent, for a total billable amount just a little bit, so at about $3.3 million. Now, just to throw in a little option over here that I was kind of keeping best for last, what I'll go ahead and do is I'll include the users who worked on these different projects. Now, what's nice about our tool or about our reporting framework is that you can create your own calculation. So to Joe's point, let's say you were interested in calculating revenue per a consulting resource on a project. Well, it's quite simple. Here you have the total amount of time spent. You have the revenue per employee. If you want to see the average hourly rate, it would be just as simple as creating a calculated measure, just as you would do in Excel. So that's definitely a strong capability from a system perspective, is creating your own calculations and your own metrics from within the Tenrock solution. So on that note, I know we have about 4 minutes left and probably a ton of questions that that we want to go ahead and answer. Let me just go ahead and change gears, and we'll try to answer some of the questions that have come in today. So just bear with me. Let me just go ahead and ask a couple, because I do see some of the questions that have come in for me. And the first one would be, do you have an integration with Microsoft Project? This is sort of a question that I get all the time. And I apologize for not preemptively answering the question, but absolutely we do. So the expectation from Tenrock's perspective is that, obviously the preference would be for you to leverage our project planning tool, but knowing that Microsoft Project is the de facto in the market, we certainly provide integration with that tool. So you can create your project plan in Microsoft Project and just simply import it into the tool once it's ready to be published to the PSA tool. Here's another question, another integration question, and I'm going to approach it in a different way. So do you have integration with NetSuite? So NetSuite is an ERP tool that's cloud-based, and it is one that we don't have an out-of-box integration with, but we actually have a quick connect platform that allows us to exchange data with virtually any third-party tool. So what we would do if we wanted to integrate Tenrock with NetSuite, it would be fairly simple. We would just need to understand what information exactly you want to exchange with NetSuite, and the integration framework that we provide can simply export that data straight out. Very, very simple. And the same holds true for virtually any third-party tool. So that can be Intact, or it can be a payroll system that we don't integrate to out of the box, or a CRM tool that we don't integrate with out of the box. So that's virtually anything. Joe, I can see a question here for you. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
So there's a question over here in regards to blended target utilization. So the question is, can you clarify blended target utilization? So the question is basically, this is an advanced metric you mentioned after the first poll, and Andrew just wants a little bit more information in terms of how the utilization for blended target utilization is calculated in the first place. Is that something that you'd be able to expand on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andrew. I saw your question. So what I'm referring to here is those PS organizations that would typically have an offshore group. A lot of us have a group in India, for example. You may have one in the Philippines, Czechoslovakia, those places. And I refer to them as back office PSO consultants. And typically, the expectation with the back office folks is that the utilization numbers are very high. They're not going to be interrupted by engineering or sales and do all these other extracurricular activities. So they may have a target utilization of around, say, 80, 85% target, maybe realistic over there. Whereas contrast that to the folks that are onshore, that are being pulled into sales environments, doing pre-sales work, or they're very senior, very knowledgeable, so they're doing things like this, giving webinars. Their target utilization for that particular individual may be quite low, even as low as 40%, because they're really doing sales support. So for environments like that, what you would have is not you wouldn't be measuring utilization for the different groups, but you'd have a blended utilization target, so which you could be something like an average or weighted average based on a headcount. And typically you'll see that with much larger PS groups that have numbers in over 100 PS folks, both here and offshore, maybe 200. So it's just a quick metric on how you're doing, on the health of the organization as a whole. Hope that helps.
Great. Joe, if you wouldn't mind answering an additional question that just came in, how would you recommend tracking the speed of adoption or adoption in general?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So basically, it's very simple. From when the project is started to when the users are actually online using the system and live and dependent on it. Again, going back to the traditional model, a lot of us claim success once we've deployed the software, we've got all the data in there, we've integrated with Salesforce, whatever it is, and we say it's now live. oh yeah, sure, it's live, but if no one's actually using it, then the system's sitting there idling and you're at risk that they could cancel their subscription. So what we're measuring here is the time it takes to go from when you initiate a kickoff meeting to when you have a critical mass of users using the system in the production environment.
Super. All right. So I think that's all the time that we had for today. We certainly don't want to intrude on any more of your afternoon today. So we're about 2 minutes after the top of the hour. I just want to go ahead and thank Joe and Liz for helping us out today. Also, a very quick word. I'm going to go ahead and post the PDU claim information for you folks to jot down. But as a side note, we've recorded today's session, so pretty much the last hour has been recorded. So you don't really need to jot anything down. You should receive an email blast within the next, I think, within the next day or so. With the recording, you'll see Joe's slide deck as well as the Tenrock slide of today's presentation. So once again, Joe and Liz, thank you very much. It was very informative, as usual, to have you folks on, and we look forward to having you on again in the near future. And thank you again to our audience.
And thanks to Liz as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected. Goodbye.